Welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers for a World in Crisis. Today we take up the subject attitude. First, from Sri Aurobindo. You are quite right in taking an optimistic and not a pessimistic attitude in the sadhana. Progressive sadhana is enormously helped by an assured faith and confidence. Such a confidence helps to realize, for it is dynamic and tends to fulfill itself. The attitude you express in your letter is quite the right one. Whatever sufferings come on the path are not too high a price for the victory that has to be won. And if they are taken in the right spirit, they become even a means towards the victory. If trust and patience fail when aspiration is quiescent, that would mean that the sadhak is relying solely on his own effort. It would mean, oh, my aspiration has failed, so there is no hope for me. My aspiration fails, so what can the mother do? On the contrary, the sadhak should feel, never mind, my aspiration will come back again. Meanwhile, I know that the mother is with me, even when I do not feel her. She will carry me through even the darkest period. That is the fully right attitude you must have. To those who have it, depression could do nothing. Even if it comes, it has to return baffled. A difficulty comes, or an arrest in some movement which you have begun or have been carrying on for some time. How is it to be dealt with? For such arrests are inevitably frequent enough, not only for you, but for everyone who is a seeker. One might almost say that every step forward is followed by an arrest. At least that is a very common, if not a universal, experience. It is to be dealt with by becoming always more quiet, more firm in the will to go through, by opening oneself more and more, so that any obstructing non-receptivity in the nature may diminish or disappear. By an affirmation of faith, even in the midst of the obscurity, faith in the presence of a power that is working behind the cloud and the veil, in the guidance of the Guru, by an observation of oneself to find any cause of the arrest, not in a spirit of depression or discouragement, but with the will to find out and remove it. This is the only right attitude, and if one is persistent in taking it, the periods of arrest are not abolished, for that cannot be at this stage, but greatly shortened and lightened in their incidence. Sometimes these arrests are periods long or short, of assimilation or unseen preparation, their appearance of sterile immobility is deceptive. In that case, with the right attitude, one can, after a time, by opening, by observation, by accumulated experience, begin to feel, to get some inkling of what is being prepared or done. Sometimes it is a period of true obstruction, in which the power at work has to deal with the obstacles in the way. Obstacles in oneself, obstacles of the opposing cosmic forces, or any other, or of all together. And this kind of arrest may be long or short, according to the magnitude or obstinacy or complexity of the impediments that are met. But here too, the right attitude can alleviate or shorten, and, if persistently taken, help to a more radical removal of the difficulties, and greatly diminish the necessity of complete arrests hereafter. On the contrary, an attitude of depression or unfaith in the help or the guidance or in the certitude of the victory of the guiding power, a shutting up of yourself in the sense of the difficulties, impedes the recovery, prolongs the difficulties, helps the obstructions to recur with force, instead of progressively diminishing in their incidence. It is an attitude whose persistence or recurrence you must resolutely throw aside if you want to get over the obstruction which you feel so much, which the depressed attitude only makes, while it lasts, more acute. What you write is no doubt true, and it is necessary to see it so as to be able to comprehend and grasp the true attitude necessary for the sadhana. But, as I have said, one must not be distressed or depressed by perceiving the weaknesses inherent in human nature and the difficulty of getting them out. The difficulty is natural, for they have been there for thousands of lives and are the very nature of man's vital and mental ignorance. It is not surprising that they should have a power to stick and take time to disappear. But there is a true being and a true consciousness that is there in us, hidden by the surface formations of nature, and which can shake them off once it emerges. By taking the right attitude of selfless devotion within and persisting in it, in spite of the surface nature's troublesome self-repetitions, one enables this inner being and consciousness to emerge, and with the mother's force working in it, deliver the being from all return of the movements of the old nature. The intense love and bhakti does not come at once. It comes as the power of the psychic grows more and more in the being. But to aspire for it is right, and the sincere aspiration is sure to fulfill itself. Always seek to progress in quietude, happiness, and confidence. That is the most helpful attitude. Do not listen to contrary suggestions from outside. The attitude you have taken is the right one. It is this feeling and attitude which help you to overcome so rapidly the attacks that sometimes fall upon you and throw you out of the right consciousness. As you say, difficulties so taken become opportunities. The difficulty faced in the right spirit and conquered, one finds that an obstacle has disappeared. A first step forward has been taken. And from the Mother, always to maintain an attitude of concentration on the divine life is more important than making rules that are too rigid. It would be better to resolve not to smile in expectation of a vital interchange. The consent of all the being is necessary for the divine change. And it is the completeness and fullness of the consent that constitutes the integral surrender. But the consent of the lower vital must not be only a mental profession or a passing emotional adhesion. It must translate itself into an abiding attitude and a persistent and consistent action. But there is a very large number of things that one generally does without preliminary reflection. When a circumstance occurs, you obey, so to say. In fact, these things, as almost everything that one does in life, have no importance in themselves. It is the attitude that one takes which is important. You may have to do a certain thing because it is there before you, and when one is in external life, one has to act. That has an importance if it is an act whose consequences may profoundly affect your life. To marry, for example, to go and live at some place or other, take to a particular occupation. These are things which are generally considered important, and which are so to a certain extent. But even for these things, all depends, from the point of view of yoga, much more on the attitude you take than on the action itself. It is well understood that when it is a question of the little things of daily life, their importance is almost nothing. There are certain scrupulous persons who raise problems and find it very difficult to solve them because the problems are badly set. I knew, for example, a young woman, a theosophist, who was trying to practice and told me one day, "We are taught that the divine will must prevail in everything that we do. But in the morning, when I take my early breakfast, How am I to know whether God wants me to put 2 lumps of sugar in my coffee or only 1? It was touching, and I had some difficulty in making her understand that the spirit in which she drank her coffee, her attitude towards the food that she was taking, was much more important than the number of sugar lumps that she took. It is so with all the little things that one does every moment. The divine consciousness does not act in the human way and does not decide the number of sugar lumps that you are to put in your coffee. What it does is to put you gradually into the true attitude towards all things, an attitude of consecration, suppleness, adhesion, aspiration, goodwill, plasticity, effort for progress. It is that which counts, much more than the small decisions that you may have to take at each second. Before you act, you can try to see what is the right action, but you will not be able to do it by any mental discussion or through a mental problem. It is only when you take an inner attitude, creating an atmosphere of harmony, a progressive harmony, that whatever you do becomes necessarily, under the given circumstances, the best thing that could be done. The ideal would be an attitude so total that the action becomes spontaneous, dictated by something other than the external reason. But it is an ideal to which one should no doubt aspire, but which cannot be realized all at once. A certain time is needed for that. Till then, it is much more important to take care about keeping the right attitude and the true inspiration than to decide whether one should do gymnastics or not, whether one should follow a particular course of study or not, because all that has no importance in itself. The only important thing is to maintain the right orientation in one's aspiration and the living will to progress. That concludes Mother and Sri Aurobindo on attitude. There are a number of flowers named by Mother that carry the message of attitude. For example, there is devotional attitude, aspiration for the right attitude, and right attitude established. All are available in the 2 volumes, Flowers and Their Messages, and the Spiritual Significance of Flowers. Namaste.